Hello, my name is Tony, and today we're going to look at another horrible case with you. On July 31, 1999, 17-year-olds J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hallett went out to a party near their Dothan, Alabama homes. However, they got lost and stopped at an Ozark convenience store to ask for directions. Tracie called her mother and told her that they had gotten lost and ended up in Ozark. They were never heard from again. A store employee gave the girls directions back to Dothan. She noticed them exit the parking lot and onto the highway. This was their final sighting alive. On that night, around 10:05 p.m., the two girls left their hometown of Dothan in Beasley's 1993 black Mazda 929. It was JB's 17th birthday, and the friends planned to celebrate with a field party in Headland, about 10 miles north of Dothan. The girls never showed up to the party. The pair were spotted shortly after 11:30 p.m. in Ozark, more than 20 miles northwest of Dothan, at the Big Little convenience store and Chevron station at 763 East Broad Street. The store had closed at 11 p.m., but the girls ran into Marilyn Merritt and her daughter, who had stopped to buy a soda. The girls requested and were given directions to U.S. Highway 231, which would take them 20 miles southeast to Dothan. Ms. Merritt and her daughter later told cops that Beasley's car was spotless, the girls were clean, and nothing appeared to be wrong. Tracie Hallett called her mother from the payphone at the far right end of the storefront, explaining that they had gotten lost and ended up in Ozark, but that they now had directions and were on their way home. Tracie's mother, Carol Roberts, later stated, "There was nothing wrong with Tracie's voice. Mom, I love you," she said, "and I'll be home soon." Ms. Merritt and her daughter watched as the girls exited the parking lot and turned right onto the highway. It was the last time anyone saw them alive besides their murderer. J.B. and Tracie were reported missing at 8 a.m. the next morning, and at nearly the same time, Ozark police officers discovered the black Mazda 929, parked on Herring Avenue, less than a mile from the payphone Tracie Hallett had used the night before. When the car was discovered, there were no obvious signs of foul play, according to the police. Additionally, the police said the girls' reason for stopping is unknown, and it does not appear that they were forced off the road because there was no damage to the car. Despite being undamaged, the car was muddy and nearly out of gas, even though it had been filled the day before. The driver's side window was slightly rolled down, and the doors were unlocked. The girls' purses were inside the car, and JB's driver's license was on the dashboard. The car keys, however, were missing. After several hours with no sign of the girls, Dothan police dispatched an investigator who planned to have the car towed back to Dothan. While officers waited for a tow truck, the Dothan investigator discovered he could open the trunk using an inside lever without using the keys. 6 hours had passed since the car's discovery, and it was nearly 2 p.m. when he opened the trunk. J.B. Beasley and Tracie Hallett were both dead from a single 9mm gunshot wound to the head. The girls were killed execution style with a single gunshot each to their heads, then stuffed in the trunk of the car. Tracie had a single shot to the temple, a scratch on her arm, and briar thorns on her pants, despite the fact that the girls were dressed and there were no obvious signs of a struggle. Her $95 New Balance shoes purchased from the week before were caked in mud. The positioning of the bodies revealed that she had been stuffed into the trunk first. A 9mm shell casing was perched perilously on her leg. JB had been shot in the cheek, and her shoes were visibly dirty with mud on them. Both of the girls' pants were soaked below the knee. When it was discovered that not only the girls' purses, but also their jewelry, money, and credit cards were all inside the car, robbery was quickly ruled out as a motive. JB's keychain, which held her car and other keys, was the only known missing item. It was described as being made up of white blocks with black letters spelling out "hard to get." Autopsies revealed that neither of the girls had been raped, and no traces of alcohol or drugs were found. However, the state crime lab issued a report more than 2 months later indicating that there were traces of sperm on JB's bra, panties, and skin. The police hope that the sperm will eventually lead them to a suspect. In addition, an unknown palm print was discovered on the trunk's lid. Authorities also determined that the girls were not killed where the car was parked on Herring Avenue. "You have to assume it's a sex offense or that it arose from a sex offense," said David Emery, district attorney for Dale and Geneva counties. "If we could find who donated that semen, I think we'll have the killer." At 11:30 p.m. on July 31, 1999, at the same time Tracie Hallett called her mother from the Big Little Store payphone, Johnny William Barentine, a 28-year-old part-time mechanic, told his young wife he was going out to get milk for the couple's 2-year-old son. Barentine did not return home until shortly before 1 a.m., and when he did, he was visibly upset, according to his wife. When she asked what happened to his car, he said it was hit by a black truck with a Dothan tag near Herring Avenue. Barentine would later tell others that he knew something about the murders of the 2 teenagers discovered on Herring Avenue. "He just said he thought he might know who did it," Evalyn Murphy said. Evalyn is a friend of Barentine and his wife, adding that Leon Jordan, her boyfriend, encouraged Barentine to go to the authorities and collect the reward. Barentine finally took the advice, and on September 1, 1 month after the bodies of JB and Tracie were discovered, he met with police for a 4-hour videotaped interview, ultimately telling 6 different stories and placing himself at the scene of the crime in some of them. According to Ozark Police Chief Tony Spivey, Barentine initially stated that he saw a black truck speeding away from the area where the girls were discovered on the night of the killings. As the interview progressed, he changed his story several times, eventually claiming he'd picked up an unknown tattooed man, and the two drove by the Big Little Store. Barentine claimed the man he'd given a ride to got into a car with 2 girls he identified as the dead girls and told him to follow. He claimed they arrived on Herring Avenue, where the man helped the girls out of the car. Barentine stated that he heard 2 gunshots and that when the man returned, he gave him a ride away from the scene before returning home. In another version, Barentine told investigators that the man he'd picked up and driven was his neighbor. Barentine lived less than a mile, 0.8 to be exact, from where the girls' bodies were discovered. Barentine was arrested right away, and he was named the prime suspect and charged with 2 counts of capital murder. However, there were issues with his accounts. He never mentioned sexual activity as a possible explanation for the sperm found on JB's body and clothing. The neighbor he implicated had an alibi for the evening, and the DNA from the sperm did not match that of Barentine or the neighbor. Barentine, whose mugshot makes him appear to have awoken from a deep sleep, immediately admitted he'd made up the entire story in order to get some quick cash. "I didn't see anything," he later testified before a grand jury. "I made up everything to get the reward money." He says he was there, Spivey explained, explaining why Barentine was a suspect. "He told us how the girls got out of the car. One of the girls ran. The girls were combative. The girls were placed in the trunk by the individual. There were 2 shots fired. The gunman returns to his car. He has something in his hand. He drove the gunman out of town. He went back home." During a preliminary hearing on September 21, Alabama Bureau of Investigation agent Charles Huggins testified that Barentine could describe the girls' clothing and other items consistent with the crime. Spivey stated that the district attorney, who was present at the September 1 interview, directed police to arrest Barentine. Spivey stated at a press conference that police were confident they had arrested the correct man. "What do you do?" Spivey would explain later. "If you don't charge him, you might as well let a murderer walk out the door. You're stuck between a stone and a hard place." Barentine has been held without bond in the Dale County Jail since his arrest on September 1. Barentine denied involvement in the killings during a bond hearing before Circuit Judge McLaughlin on October 18, despite telling police he witnessed the 2 17-year-olds being shot to death by an acquaintance with tattoos all over his arms. Barentine testified before the judge that he never picked up a tattooed man and didn't see anything the night of the murders. He stated that he simply went to the BP around 11 p.m. to get milk for his young son. McLaughlin denied Barentine bond and appointed Bill Cominos, a 36-year-old veteran lawyer, to represent the defendant. Barentine's friends and family rallied around him, proclaiming his innocence to anyone who would listen. He did not do it, his mother, Faye Barentine, said emphatically the day after her son was arrested. "He's not up to the task. He has a 2-year-old son and is incapable of doing anything that would harm a child." Cominos stated that his client had clearly gotten himself into a situation with investigators that he was unable to handle. "As a lawyer, you need to take what your client says with a grain of salt sometimes," he continued, speaking in slow, measured tones, his hands clasped together almost as if praying. "But I had a feeling from the very beginning that, in viewing the car and the evidence, I said to myself, no. Johnny Barentine could not have done this." Kamenos claimed that the police were under intense pressure to make an arrest and that the reward money piled up. Kamenos claimed that it grew large enough to entice Barentine. Kamenos alleged. Well, they started. They questioned, and questioned, and questioned, for hours, the lawyer said, pausing after each sentence to reflect. It's all on video, and the questions turn into accusations. From accusations to recommendations. Barentine, who had lived in Ozark for several years and was living at 110 Young Avenue with his wife and son, stated that he went to Spivey several days after the murders to inform him of a rumor. He gave Spivey his name and was told that the police had already investigated the rumor and that the man Barentine mentioned was not a suspect. Several days after the murder, Barentine reportedly stated that he, his wife, and brother-in-law went to the scene on Herring Street where the car was discovered in search of anything that could assist the police in solving the case. Barentine claimed he was tired when he told police the story on September 1st at the police station. He claimed he was interviewed for more than 4 hours without being told he could use the restroom or leave at any time. He claimed that the police tricked me into telling the story. Barentine completed 7th grade and a portion of 8th grade and was enrolled in special education classes, according to testimony at one hearing. Daleville lawyer Joe Gallo said he believed that police, who were under a lot of pressure to solve the case, would drop charges against Barentine if they thought he was even remotely involved. Gallo, on the other hand, provided no explanation for Barentine's stories, other than to say Barentine had mild mental retardation. "You've got me," he said at the end. Barentine's bond request was granted after it was revealed that his DNA did not match that of the semen found on JB's body and clothing. On Friday, December 17th, he was released from jail. Barentine was not indicted by a Dale County grand jury in January. Barentine is living in Daleville now, Kamenos explained at the time, and is trying to pick up the pieces. According to Kamenos, there is no physical evidence linking Barentine to the murders. Nonetheless, police continue to suspect him, according to Spivey, noting that Barentine is also accused of making a jailhouse confession. Barentine could be charged later if new evidence points to him, according to the police. Barentine was not the only suspect. Unfortunately, there were 3 men as well. Each of them had their own connections that made them potential culprits in the crime. The first suspect was the man from Michigan. According to Spivey, a man from Michigan who was at a party the night of the murders near where the car was found is also a very viable suspect, despite tests failing to match the man's DNA to that found on J.B. Beasley's clothing. Spivey would not name the man but said he left town within days of the murders and that investigators had traveled to Michigan 3 times to interview him. The man is unable to account for 3 or 4 hours of his time on the night of the murders, and he later made suspicious statements to others. Spivey refused to explain what he meant by suspicious. The second one was the driver of the small white pickup truck. A video surveillance camera inside the Big Little store captured a grainy, low-quality image of what appears to be a small white pickup truck at the gas pumps while JB and Tracie were on the phone with Tracie's mother. The store had closed, and there was no record of a credit or debit card purchase at the pump at that time. The video never shows anyone getting out of the truck and never shows the driver clearly. 1 month after releasing a photo of the truck to the media, no one had come forward. The truck and its driver appear to have vanished. So that may be the key, Spivey said. And finally, the man from Mississippi. In early March 2000, it was reported that a DNA sample taken from a man in Jones County, Mississippi, was being compared to samples taken from J.B. Beasley's body, but Spivey reported that no factual evidence linking the man to the brutal murders of the Alabama girls was known at the time. Spivey stated that the man was arrested in Jones County on an outstanding warrant for possession of drug paraphernalia issued in Ozark. The man was staying with relatives in Ozark when the murders occurred, but he left 2 days later. Investigators, according to Spivey, wanted to question him about the case. He has been extensively interviewed, and DNA samples have been obtained and sent to the forensics lab, Spivey said at the time. However, at this time, we do not have any factual information linking him to this case. We just want to make sure he's not involved. For nearly 2 decades, no one was apprehended for the heinous murders that took place. However, just a few months prior to the approaching 20th anniversary, the police made a pivotal decision. They opted to send all the evidence collected from the crime scene to Parabon Nanolabs. Through the revolutionary technique of genetic genealogy, law enforcement agencies now possess the means to identify potential suspects by leveraging the DNA voluntarily submitted by family members to genealogy databases. This breakthrough allows investigators to construct more extensive family trees than ever before, aiding in their pursuit of justice. In the pursuit of justice, meticulous efforts were made in search of a possible DNA match from the assault kit recovered during Beasley's autopsy, as well as from the sperm found on her underwear and sweater. Initially, the investigation encountered a roadblock, with only distant cousins being identified through the GED match platform. However, the invaluable assistance of Parabon enabled the provision of a comprehensive list of potential family surnames to the diligent police officers. Among the names presented, the surname McCraney stood out as a promising lead. Consequently, the authorities approached McCraney, not as a suspect but as a potential relative of the individual under investigation, seeking his voluntary cooperation in providing a DNA sample. Remarkably, McCraney's own DNA sample proved to be a striking match with the profile obtained from the crime scene. Coley McCraney was arrested on March 1, 2019 and charged in the August 1, 1999 deaths of 17-year-old Tracie Hallett and 17-year-old J.B. Beasley in Ozark, Alabama. McCraney pleaded not guilty, and the case against him proceeded in Dale County, Alabama. His legal team strongly maintains McCraney's innocence, asserting that the victims were actually murdered by a former police officer. Their argument suggests that the girls possessed crucial evidence of police corruption, making them targets for this heinous crime. McCraney's trial took place in April 2023. One of the defense's key witnesses was expected to testify that she heard a police officer confess to killing girls because they had evidence of a conspiracy among local cops who were involved in the drug trade. Under oath, this witness recanted her testimony, and the officer accused of murder also denied the allegations. During the trial, McCraney took the stand to testify in his own defense, asserting that he had engaged in a relationship with Beasley approximately 1 month prior to her tragic death. However, he adamantly denied any involvement in her untimely death. McCraney claimed that he had met with Beasley on the fateful night and that they had engaged in consensual sex within the back of his truck. Regrettably, the jury found his testimony lacking in credibility. McCraney's defense attorneys attributed this unfavorable outcome to his nervous disposition, which ultimately hindered his ability to make a favorable impression. The jury was presented with compelling testimony from multiple forensic scientists, who meticulously described the gunshot wounds to the heads of the girls. In addition, they were shown a series of photographs depicting the girls as they were discovered, providing a vivid and detailed account of the tragic event. The jury was also provided with visual evidence of the vehicle in which the girls were found, along with a thorough explanation of the procedures implemented to safeguard any potential evidence. Among the photographs presented to the jury were images of the girls' jeans, visibly soiled and damp from the knees down, as well as their tennis shoes, which exhibited the same disheveled state. Furthermore, the police officer who made the grim discovery inside the trunk of the vehicle attested to the presence of dried blood on the trunk and mud on its exterior, suggesting that it had been driven along a dirt road. The gravity of the situation was palpable as the jury absorbed the wealth of information and visual evidence presented before them. The expert testimonies and photographic documentation served to paint a haunting picture of the crime scene, leaving an indelible impression on the minds of those in the courtroom. According to a forensic scientist, vaginal and anal swabs taken from Beasley in 1999 tested positive for semen but negative for blood. He also stated that a portion of Beasley's bra and sweater tested positive for semen. Additionally, Beasley's jeans tested positive for blood and had soil stains on the inside and outside. He stated that there were no abrasions on her body. According to a former Alabama Bureau of Investigation officer, the blood blowback and mud indicated that the girls were shot somewhere other than where they were discovered. McCraney was convicted of the murders by a jury on April 27, 2023. However, they chose not to recommend the death penalty. Subsequently, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on June 15, 2023. McCraney's legal team has expressed their intention to pursue a fresh trial, citing several grounds. Firstly, they argue that 2 jurors openly admitted that they would have a predisposition towards recommending the penalty if the defendant were found guilty. Additionally, they contend that jurors were engaging in the unauthorized activity of reading and sharing trial-related information on social media platforms. However, the Dale County Circuit Court, on July 28, 2023, rejected the defendant's plea for a new trial. Coley McCraney has now taken up residence in a maximum security prison in Alabama, where he will spend the remainder of his life. Coley McCraney, in my professional opinion, is unquestionably deserving of a life sentence for committing this heinous crime. This serves as a powerful testament to the unwavering effectiveness of our justice system in punishing such abhorrent acts. While it is crucial to acknowledge that retribution alone cannot fully mend the deep wounds inflicted upon the loved ones of the two girls, it undeniably acts as a potent deterrent against future acts of violence and offers a semblance of closure for those profoundly affected by this tragic event. As professionals, it is of utmost importance for us to wholeheartedly recognize and respect the meticulous legal proceedings that led to this just outcome, finding solace in the irrefutable fact that justice has been unequivocally served. Hey, what's your take on this case? Do you believe that the punishment Coley McCraney received was fair? Or do you think he should have faced the death sentence? Let me know what you think in the comments. Tony was with you, and thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click the bell to stay up to date on the biggest stories from around the world. I'll see you soon. Take care.